Hello, everyone. Welcome to the day two of TestMu 2024. Hope you had a really great time yesterday on day one. Got to learn a lot. I did. And that's learning will continue today as well. And I'm really looking forward to all the sessions. Uh, Before we move forward, again, few items wish to highlight. One of the first one is that please don't spam the feed that we have. I know there are a lot of exciting people. Everybody wants to connect with everybody, but let's not spam. Let's keep it clean. Let's keep it simple. In addition, there is a Q&A chat option in the right side on your screens. Feel free to add in your questions over there. If type permits, we'll try to take some questions at that after the end of the session. Uh, do spam the emojis. That will be a great booster for us. Give us a confidence. So do that. Feel free to do that. Yeah, that's more of it. Okay, before we move forward, another thing to highlight: all these sessions we are recording. There will be there till in the AirMeet platform for you to watch later. But at the end of the conference, we'll be uploading them over our YouTube channel as well. So feel free to do that. And also, we are running a lot of contests specifically around our GenAI platform that we launched yesterday, and there are contests around TestMu as well. Feel free to check them out and our booth where we have a lot of partners. Now, coming back to the session. So one of the promises we made when we started off with TestMu was to bring you insights from industry leaders, not just from startups, from open source, but also from how large scale companies like Wipro is looking at quality engineering, looking at AI in the quality engineering. And today's session is just that, us fulfilling our promises. We are very privileged to have with us today Rituparna Ghosh. She has more than 27 years of total experience and 24 years of experience in Wipro. Currently, she is vice president and head of quality assurance at Wipro. So, a lot of experience and whatever insights she's going to share today, it would be amazing, a goal for us. We're going to go and do a little bit of deep dive on how companies like Wipro is looking at AI and as the name suggests, AI elevating the tested experience. So without further delay, Rituparna, the stage is yours.
Thanks so much, Mudit. And thanks to the entire Lambda Test team for inviting me to your conference. And I was just hearing about the past statistics, and I think this is an amazing thing that we are doing. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from. And again, yesterday was exciting. I do hope that I don't let the excitement down today. Yeah, what I want to do today is talk about a topic which is actually very close to my heart, which is called tester experience. Now, there have been multiple experiences that you would have heard of. First is, of course, the user, and hence came user experience because user is key. You have to give him the right amount of right amount of happiness, let's say, when he uses your product, right? So that's user experience. Then came the developers, the really key guys. How can we make life easier for them, improve their productivity, give them tools, give them solutions, platforms which make them, not only operate faster, but really, remove all of the other things that they need to do. And then came DevX. But here's what I've seen very interesting is that we are the testers, the testing community, and I'm assuming most of you are from the testing community who've joined. Um, Actually, we are the ones who have given the assurance to the users that everything is fine because you've, gone ahead and tested everything, checked all the boxes, and you don't need to wake up in the middle of the night saying that something has happened. But we are almost getting treated like second cousins, right? And that to poor second cousins. So there is this phrase which is called, and I'm sure you would have heard of it, which is do something that you love and you will never have to work for a day in your life. So I got very inspired with that, and I said that for the testers, how do we ensure that they are loving what they're doing so that they have the same feeling. And then I said, okay, we've done developer experience. Why don't we now really look at tested experience? So I spoke to this one friend of mine, and I pitched, saying that, so I'm looking at tester experience. So he said that, with your user experience and developer experience, it's actually leading to tester exhaustion. So please don't bring in another experience to us. So that was a small joke. Hope it landed well.
No, I'm liking that experience.
Great. So every few years, we've seen this new waves and new technologies come in. And if you talk to the pundits, everybody says that, okay, testing is going to be the first thing that will go out. Uh, Lowest hanging fruit. That's what people will work upon, and you know that's going to be the end of testing. But I think testing and testers together have we've got this amazing power of really doing an Uno reverse. We take that technology and we, literally turn it on its head and create something which provides a huge differentiation in terms of effectiveness, productivity, whatever you want to call it. So, given that you want to focus on the tester and give him the best kind of experience. I think GenAI came at a very appropriate time, because as we are using generative AI within our organization, creating accelerators, solutions, etc., the possibility and the power of how you can really make the tester have a better experience really comes true to life. Yeah, so I would say improving tester experience, using generative AI, things have really made it pretty easy. Now, before I get, and I think this is now the time where I should share my screen. So just give me a minute, and I am hoping that you are able to see the presentation.
Yes, yes, we are.
Yeah, wonderful. So before I get into this, entire experience part, uh, my team and I were discussing, and we thought it would be a good idea to dispel some of the common myths that still is there surrounding generative AI, and specifically around testing. So the first thing which we have heard is, testers are not needed because Gen AI can autonomously carry out all the testing. In reality, what generative AI does is that it augments what a tester does. So it is not going to be replacing human testers. So all of us testing guys should feel comfortable that we've got an assistant sitting next to us who helps us do things better. But at least at this point of time, it is an assistant. And then we get this, so these are all polls that we did internally, and then we get this entire thing, and we got this entire question that you'll get any Gen AI solution, and that's about it. That's what you need to do, because you don't require minimum any kind of training. So the solution will require a minimal amount of training so that it can showcase its value. uh, Not really, because the amount of hallucination and bias amplification which Gen AI has, you really need somebody to again check on that and see that your solution is not displaying some of those biases. So two things come to mind. One is obviously, I'm sure you guys would have seen when Gemini first launched, and when somebody gave a question that show me the founding fathers of the United States. It actually gave up a picture of the Native Americans, and I still remember reading a article which said, why couldn't they just invest into a couple of testers to take a look at all of that, right? The second thing, and this is specifically around bias. One of the big four consultants, they wanted to obviously bring in a better degree of diversity within their teams. So they took all of their resumes of the people who had worked for the past 30 years, fed it into their LLM which they were training. And then created something where all the resumes would get pushed in and the right resume would come out. And what they realized that instead of diversity, all the resumes that were coming out was of men, sometimes older men, middle-aged men, etc. And the reason for this was very interesting because all the data that they had fed was of men who had applied to this particular organization, and they had this specific demographics. So that's what the system learned, and that's what the system then threw up. So there has to be a huge degree of training, that a huge degree of training plus assurance of what is it that you're actually training your LLM around. So again, testers become important. Then came this thing that the code is going to get generated by GenAI. So everybody today talks about Copilot, how Copilot is so great, you can get all of the things done. So it will actually require minimal amount of testing. And again, why do you need testers? Again, the code which gets generated by your AI engine will be boilerplate, and there has to be a significant amount of modification and contextualization which has to be done. Once you do that, you again need the tester to come in and check whether everything is working fine. And the last but not the least, Gen AI will replace all of traditional AI. So we should not talk about traditional AI. Again, the Gen AI also has its limitation. And there are certain use cases where it will never replace your existing AI solution. So here's the fun fact around that. uh, if you look at predicting, right, predictability and things like that, Gen AI does not do that all that well. And that's where your traditional AI solutions come in and become more critical. So these are some of the misconceptions which is related to generative AI. I'm sure you can place this thing if you're a developer. Some of this will work for you as well. Uh, don't believe all what you hear. I think it's very important that you are able to learn about the subject, understand the subject better, and then form your opinions. Whoops. I hope you can still see my screen in the presentation. Hello, can somebody just do a thumbs up to confirm that my presentation is visible? Are you there? Hello. Okay, let me escape for a while and
Hello?
yeah, Mudit, I was just asking. Okay,
Yes,
everybody was giving a thumbs
screen
up.
is visible.
All right,
Screen
wonderful.
is visible. No worries.
Right. So, as I was saying, a lot of this will be true anywhere, whichever space that you're looking at. So understand better rather than just, drinking the Kool-Aid. Any which ways. What does all of this mean as far as our testers are concerned? What's the implication on the testing community? Do you like it or not? The code generation by Gen AI engines or solutions is going to explode. And I actually believe that the role of the developers will get a lot more commoditized. And the role of a tester will actually become more important given the huge amount of code that is now going to get generated. The second thing is that there are going to be multiple models which will be used for generative AI by different teams for different personas. And I'll talk a little bit about this later on. And for each of these personas, you need to, given that the fact that their ask is different, you need to create different strategies in terms of how are you going to test this through a generative AI solution. Once again, while we use the generative AI solution as your assistant, the brains is something which you are bringing in. And again, with the huge amount of explosion of code generation that we expect to see, this is again going to be very critical for our testers. And the third thing is you really have to work very, 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 very fast, just trying to keep up with the amount of code that is being generated. So that's in terms of the implications that all of this has on the Yeah, all of this has on the work that's happening in the market today. Uh, so how will this transform the global landscape, employment, and the talent pool? And this is something which I was telling earlier, that it is going to be extremely likely that individuals will have workspaces of their own with generative AI, where there has been, tuning of the use cases, contextualized data has been included, your use cases has been configured to suit the different personas. If you look at a financial institution, you can have somebody who is working in retail banking, somebody who's working in, let's say, core banking, somebody who's working around payments. Each of these personas will have a different need, and that's where you will end up having their workspaces contextualized, tested differently, but when they adopt a gen AI solution of theirs. Now the existing roles, that is what is going to get augmented. So, today we think of testers being the only person who is going to be responsible for quality. Now, if you have a Gen AI platform which is enabled with QE, there are two things that's going to happen. First is what I call as Horizon 1, which is the existing role gets empowered. So your Gen AI assistant is going to be helping bake in quality for every task. And if you look at the in, you know innovation adoption curve, what we are seeing is that we are almost about to cross the chasm. So you had your early innovators who came up with some of these things, adopted it in their organization. Then we are now getting into we've had your early adopters as well. And now more and more of the stories which get shared, maybe in conferences like this as well, you will get into the early majority. And that's where really the adoption will start happening. So that's your horizon 1. Your horizon 2 is when your new roles are going to get evolved. So you'll have a context curator, maybe a engineer who's focused on QE, domain architect around generative AI. So the new roles are going to get evolved, and what we can do is do our own, get into forums like this, have those discussions, maybe to figure out what is going to happen as far as our talent pool is concerned, and how do we keep them ready. uh, One of the interesting things that I always get asked is in terms of how soon do we move from horizon 1 to horizon 2. uh, Again, I think that is anybody's business. Anybody can take a guess at it. Some people say that it's going to be 2 years by the time you have the horizon 2 coming in, because we are right now in horizon 1 itself. But even if you have people getting into horizon 2 in another 2 years, that is still going to be your early innovators. So if the broad basing of horizon 1 happens in the next, let's say, in the next 2 to 3 years, post that horizon 2 will face a similar thing, where the broad basing of horizon 2 is going to happen as well. But the fact that the roles are going to evolve, that is clear. The traditional tester as we knew it is going to be morphed into something else. But if you ask me, that's the exciting and the interesting part of the journey. This is something which I don't want to spend too much of time about, but I'll tie this up with the topic later on. But I still thought it would be a good idea to just show this in terms of how, in day in the life of a tester, has the tester doing things which are really core to the testing design, test strategies, write test cases, test design, whatever you want to talk about it, run your regression suits, work to see how you can make it more effective. And then there are all of these supplementary activities which still has to be done. Your CI/CD engine is incompatible, so try and figure this out. Your pipeline is not instrumented. So again, there is no DevOps DevOps expert in the team. So you go and work with the entire team to see how maybe the pipeline can get instrumented. So there are a lot of things that you end up doing which becomes supplementary, as compared to the core activities that you do. And some of the figures say that the supplementary activities can take up anywhere between 60 to 70% of the work that a tester really has to do. So there's only 30% of the time which is spent on the core work that you're supposed to do. So these are all the things that can get either eliminated through automation or augmented by using a GenAI assistant. So this is how GenAI in the STLC will really end up playing a huge part, because all of those things that you were doing today and getting maybe exhausted about is where GenAI can impact and really make life a lot easier for our testers. Moving on, and this is something which everybody keeps on asking: what are the benefits on the ground impact? uh, we have seen anywhere between 40 to 50% of effort reduction. And this is only, remember, this is only in the testing space. About 6 times increase in the automation throughput, similar higher improvements as far as the pod throughput is concerned. What does this mean for the business? As far as the business is concerned, the business can either deliver faster, as in, with the impact which GenAI can bring, the business is able to deliver their release, or have their releases faster. Or if you have an organization which has a fixed release time period, they can include more features into that particular release. So is this just smoke that I'm blowing off of blowing off over here? No. So let me give you two examples, right? One is, we said that to prove the case, let us see in terms of taking one of the typical things which the tester does and passing it through our GenAI accelerator, and see what do we end up having. So we took test cases to start with, and in test cases we saw whatever a person would do in, let's say, 2 days, we could do that entire thing in 2 hours. So if you have a particular user story, assuming that the acceptance criteria is well defined, 2 days to 2 hours. We said, okay, for web applications, this is great. What about COTS? So we took an SFDC scenario. So we got an SFDC use case, and we did the same work. And we presented this actually to the client, where we are now implementing the solution that we have. And that particular, when we did the through that, when we did that entire thing, or when we do similar experiments, what we've always seen is that there are three kinds of information that we get. One is test cases which are common between what a human has done and what our GenAI engine has thrown up. Test cases which has a degree of bias and is not really accurate. So the accuracy, what we have seen, is between 70 to 90% plus. Some places where we've got better data in terms of the user story, acceptance criteria, etc. Obviously, the output is a lot better as well. But our best case scenario, I think, has been somewhere around 93 or 94% accuracy. Any which ways, we looked at this particular SFDC solution, SFDC use case, and we were able to come up with 179 test cases. A lot of them new, which the human tester had not even thought through. And again, it had taken the human tester 10 days or two sprints, one sprint actually, to get all the information to create his test cases, which again, the engine could do it on its own. And 176 or 179 was the number of test cases that it came up with. I do realize that I'm talking a little bit too much on the testing part of it and really not getting into the core uh, core thing that I want to talk about. So let me just quickly move ahead. And yeah, you know, the tester is not productive. I think all of us will agree to it. Uh, and what some of these things does in terms of whether it be context switching, meetings, unplanned work, tool inefficiencies, is basically increasing the cognitive load of the tester. So first is, what is this cognitive load, right? So cognitive load fundamentally is your is the power, or your, is what is there in your brain, which your memory, etc., which allows you to do things, maybe multiple things at the same time, right? And if I look at the actual definition, and I'm going to read this out. It is the amount of information the working memory can process at a given time, right? And it can also refer to the amount of effort that you need to do to remember that particular information. So just think back, any of the days when you have worked, you've had a very, very, very heavy work schedule. You get, by the end of the day, you get tired, and you also start making mistakes. And that is cognitive load at play, because you're essentially, there is a cognitive overload which has happened. And this is why, we tell everybody, don't work more than 8 hours in a day, because you just don't become productive enough by the time the last hour comes up. Now, cognitive load can be divided into three types, right? First is the intrinsic load, which is the core test activities, which again is the capacity of your memory which you are using to look at your existing jobs and do them. And if you want to do them better, the best is, to really hone your craft, practice things more, and thereby ensure that whatever is your core job, you're building a muscle memory around it. So whenever the job comes, it becomes a lot easier to perform it. So that becomes your intrinsic load. And what we typically say is that, just go ahead, train people, and save time at a later point of time as far as your intrinsic load is concerned. The second is your extraneous load. So you remember, I showed that green slide to you where, there were a lot of the supplementary activities. So these are all those things that your memory spends time on learning and doing, but it is really not relevant as far as your core activity is concerned, right? So what you try to do is remove all of this extraneous load, and which is where GenAI really comes in, because it can ensure that you don't have to do all of those very basic supplementary work. And then is your main load, which is all about your memory, learning new things, and then transforming that into a long term memory. So think of it as big picture activities. So let's say you've always wanted to understand, more about the business process, or the more about the program that you're a part of, but you've never had time. So this is what you can now do as far as your main load is concerned, that you have the opportunity to learn more about what's happening, what makes business sense, etc. So I'm not going to go in too much of detail. I think I have another 2 minutes left. So this is, before Gen AI, you end up, let's say about intrinsic load, about 45% of your time by doing that, about 50% of your time which is on extraneous activities, and a very small part of your time doing your main activities. And this is what happens after generative AI. And thus your developer experience, and again, note, I'm not talking about productivity, the developer experience starts improving, because they don't have to now spend time doing work which really doesn't have too much of meaning as far as their core work is concerned. And with the effort and the time that is saved, they can either learn new things in their area, or go ahead and train and skill them continuously. Okay? And because you're learning new things, you're able to hone your craft much better, you can get better mastery over your skills. And that's where the experience part comes in, because you are getting a better experience through this. And thus, by ensuring that you're learning, not wasting time doing other things. And this is something which I just wanted to share, that Wipro and Lambda Test, we have been collaborating together to build this entire intelligent quality ecosystem. Given the fact that I'm exactly at the top of the hour, I'm not going to talk about this in too much of detail, but please feel free. I'm assuming that these presentations are going to be available, Mudit. And I would request the audience, please feel free, reach out to us if you have any questions about the work that we do around generative AI, and how we can help you make life better, make your organization improve as far as its ways of working are concerned as well. So, in terms of call to action, and I think it would be unfair to end this session without a call to action, four things. Every organization, I think, needs to start developing their own custom generative AI strategies and solutions, specifically in terms about, do I build my own LLM? Do I buy something on, something from OpenAI or whatever? What are the guardrails that I'm going to be putting with respect to my data quality, with respect to my security, etc.? Then, for service organizations like us, create more accelerators leveraging generative AI, which can improve the delivery. For the IT departments, right? How do they leverage the time saving for strategic IT, more strategic work, and or give the time back to the people so that they can have an improvement. And for the last, which is our testers, take advantage of what is happening right now, enhance your testing skills with the generative AI knowledge. Because as I said, this is not a fad, this is happening. Tomorrow is going to be different. So, for all of our testers, the last call to action is how do you enhance your testing skills with generative AI knowledge, and go and talk to your boss saying that, now that we've used generative AI, this is the kind of time which has been saved. Have an arrangement in terms of how do you get more time to learn newer things, thereby returning it back to the organization in terms of better ways of working, better productivity, better quality of deliverables. With that, I come to the last slide, and where I would like to thank you. And this is something which we truly believe, that this is a tester which was maybe part of it, was from yesteryears and even today. And this is what testers in with the generative AI knowledge and a generative AI workbench. This is what the tester of tomorrow will end up looking like. So you can scan here to join this conversation further on LinkedIn. And thank you all for the time. We did not get an opportunity to answer any questions unless Mudit decides that he's going to give me some more time. But
No, so I think we are just over the time, but I was going through most of the questions, and to be fair, the insights that you shared are so point on that I see that most of the questions are already answered, right?
okay,
So, like what to learn Gen AI. What is the future looks like? You mentioned everything, like in the insights that you shared specifically around testing COTS application, which is something
right,
only enterprise veteran like you can share numbers behind that and percentages behind that. That's really insightful, really interesting. I think this is the first time I'm hearing of those things as well. So Rituparna, really amazed by the insights you have shared, and really glad you can join us today to share those insights with us. uh, and yeah, for everybody else, I want to highlight that this recording would be there on Pyramid channel for 2 to 3 days more, and after that, we'll be putting that back on our YouTube channel. So do check it out over there. And now you also have Rituparna's LinkedIn ID. Feel free to reach out to her, or we also have a community portal where you can put in your questions, and we'll take care of them later over there. Right. So with that said, we are coming to end, but we still have a lot of more sessions lined up for you guys today.
so,
Feel
so this is my hint to get out. Yes, Mudit, I'm doing that. But once again, thank you. And wherever you are, have a great rest of the day. Have a great conference, and hope to hear from you later on.
awesome.
Awesome.
Happy testing.
Happy testing. Yeah.